This video is to demonstrate how to run your profit and loss in a way that will allow you to look at the data to use it to optimize for profit and cash. It's also what I call running the profit and loss the right way. Okay, so let's get started. I'm in Xero. If you are using a different accounting software, then the principles I'm going to show you are exactly the same, but you may have to hit some different buttons to get there. So in Xero, we're going to go to the accounting tab. You can see there's a reports tab. There's also some shortcuts to reports. I'm going to take you into the reporting menu, as I'd like to point out there are two profit and losses that you can run. And the one that I want you to run is not the new one. So I've actually, a moment ago before I started this video, I actually took the star, which is the favourite button, and I put it onto this one because I'm interested in running this older version of a profit and loss, which I would call the accountant's profit and loss, the strategic bookkeeper's profit and loss. The other one is, it's probably simplified for business owners. And just to show you the difference, so we'll go reports. There's a little hack. You can right click, open a new tab and use multi-tabs in Xero, but this is not a how to use Xero. This is not a how to use Xero video, but there's a little tip, trick, hack anyway. So this profit and loss, the new profit and loss, only gives you the current month, and then you can change the month here. With the old one, I like the format and the way that you can modify it a little easier. Either profit and loss will give you some good data and you can compare, but yet the older one is the one that I like. Okay, so jumping in. So it's going to bring up some default data, and then we want to tell it what data we really want. And to do that, we're going to come up here, we're going to go to compare periods tab. We don't really want to see August because it's the 2nd of August, right? So if you start typing July, you'll be able to pick up the month of July. This refers to, we just want to see one period versus I could say, well, I want to see the whole year in one of these columns, which can be great if you want to look year on year. In this case, we want to look month on month. So we want to compare with the previous 11 periods being months, okay? And then we're simply going to update, and then I'll draw your attention to a couple of other things. So the next thing I want to draw your attention to is here. So show year to date and show total. Year to date is financial year to date, so it's only a month. So the total is actually 12 months. So I always like to run mine over a total because I like to see, month on month, what is the total revenue, profit, etc. that I have done over 12 months. Yeah, so you want to see, because year to date is more relevant to tax than it is to your business performance. So this is the right way, or the strategic way, to run your profit and loss. This is just a demo company, so we haven't got any data back here, but this is what we want to see, is the, so basically your profit and loss from an accrual point of view. Now, if you come here to more options, so see how there's a cash basis button. So the cash basis button is if we want to see the profit and loss on a cash basis. So cash basis is when the money hit your bank account, regardless of when you invoiced a customer or got a bill from a supplier. Accrual, which is what this is run on, which is the default, is seeing your figures based on when you invoiced your customers and when you got your bills and they were entered into your accounting software, regardless of when you were paid, when you paid your bills or you were paid for those sales. Because you might be paid for a sale the following month, you might pay a bill the following month, but accrual will capture those numbers on the day that you said, yes, I created that sale, yes, I accepted that I'll pay that bill when I pay it. And we run our businesses generally, there are exceptions to this rule, but we run our businesses generally and our profit and loss on accrual. So Now let's move on to how to basically read your profit and loss. Now, this profit and loss doesn't seem to have cost of sales in it. So what I'm going to do for the purposes of this video is I'm actually going to change some of these categories to cost of sales just to show you how it looks up here. And that will also be just a tiny little demo in changing categories in the chart of accounts. So the chart of accounts, which we can find here, is the engine of the accounting software. And just like an engine of a car, I don't recommend that business owners generally tinker with the engine. But this is how we tinker with the engine. As accounting technicians, mechanics of this software, we're good at tinkering with the engine and we make it go faster rather than break down. This is really all the categories of your expenses, right? And so let's say I decided that wages and salaries, let's say, I'm a plumber and these are my plumbers, then I'm going to change that to direct costs, which is Xero's wording for cost of sales or cost of goods sold. So those three terminologies, cost of goods sold, cost of sales, and direct costs all mean the cost of doing business, which if you are in the business of selling widgets, then a cost of sale is the actual widget that you're going to sell, okay? So for the purposes of this, I'll also go in and change this to direct costs and save. And let's just see if there's any others. I'm going to change that one to subbies, make it direct costs. So you've just seen me tinker with the engine. And what I'll do is come back across to my profit and loss and hit the update button. And you'll see that suddenly we've got cost of sales. So how to basically read your profit and loss. This is going to be a real crash course basics. Everybody's got a different level of knowledge. Everybody's got different gaps in their knowledge. So this is just going to be a really basic, let's call it, we're entering kindergarten. So your revenue is your top line, your cost of sales again. So cost of sales is simply the things that you are paying out directly related to the sale. So I'm in the business of bookkeeping. The wages that I pay my wonderful bookkeepers, they are a direct cost, okay? But the wages that I pay my executive assistant, that is an operational cost because she's not involved in the delivery of the services to clients. She's not involved in what's directly related to revenue, okay? So hopefully that makes sense to you. On that note, costs can and are a little bit subjective. So not totally subjective, but just a little bit subjective. So for example, I know some businesses deem the business development manager a cost of sale because he's there generating the sales, whereas in my business I tend to call that operational costs. So sometimes there's a little bit of a grey line, and at the end of the day, an expense is an expense is an expense is an expense. What I'm showing you here is in the area of numbers and knowledge. So that's the second step in our five-step method five-step method to optimize for profit and cash. So the first step is numbers 101. Now that's accurate and meaningful numbers, but this, what I just told you then, is taking those up-to-date accurate numbers. Sorry, numbers 101 is up-to-date accurate numbers. This is taking those up-to-date accurate numbers and actually changing them into meaningful numbers. So an expense is an expense, but if it sits down here in operational costs when it should really be up here, well, we haven't really got meaningful numbers. And if we don't have meaningful numbers, which is numbers strategy, then we can't set numbers targets, which is our fourth step, and then we can't monitor our numbers properly. So that's a little around why I talk about that. So back to basically how to read your profit and loss. I've just explained how to read your cost of sales, and we have crossed over into numbers strategy because I have explained a little bit of how to categorize them, and that's what numbers strategy is a lot about, that categorization. How to read your operating expenses? Well, do you know what? This is a lot simpler than you think. You know, advertising expenses is advertising expenses. I will point out that your GST is not in your profit and loss. So all these figures are exclusive of GST because the GST is not yours to keep or to have withheld. So you are just holding and paying GST for the government. You're part of their crowdsourcing. You're a tax collector for them. So the GST isn't in here because that's a common thing around numbers knowledge that business owners get wrong. Is I feel like it's missing 10%, and that's the GST. The other thing here is a negative. So a number in brackets means negative. So that's a negative. So this number down here in negatives, that means there was a loss that month of close to 16,000. So there's a profit in July, there's a loss in June. So in brackets means negative. Now, in terms of the basics around reading your profit and loss, that is about it. I would just say that you do need to look for trends. So we're going to look for income trends, spikes in income. What did you do that month that led to that income spiking? What did you do there? And I'll talk about how we make that more meaningful in the numbers strategy piece. But looking at trends in expenses and income is really, really important in terms of how to read it. But don't be afraid of the profit and loss and how to read it. Just try and think of it not as, numbers on a page. Just think, sales, the things that I do to make the sales and the money I spend on running my business. And then just remember your profit is down here. So if you do hear us or any of us talk about above the line and below the line, this is the line. So gross profit is the line. So above the gross profit line and below the gross profit line. Because these costs are often a little bit more fixed, they're variable to your sales. So the more sales you make, the more cost of sales changes, but they, as a percentage, they often will stay steady. And a great way to optimize for profit and cash is work in that area. These costs, now your revenue might double, but your rent stays the same, yeah? So your operational costs are very fixed, whereas your cost of sales are going to change commensurate in line with your sales, okay? So we push sales up, rent stays the same, we don't necessarily spend a lot more on printing and stationery, even our lighting and power might stay the same, even our advertising, it might go up a bit, but we might be generating more sales without more advertising. But we definitely probably we might be employing more people, we might be buying more things. If we're selling more widgets, we're buying more widgets. And in numbers strategy, we'll talk about, and also just in overall smart operations, I'll talk more about how to influence those numbers. But for now, remember that above the line is all about sales and cost of sales. Below the line is all about those fixed operational expenses. Your operational expenses will often stay about the same, whereas your cost of sales will go up and down commensurate with sales. And I think in terms of Numbers Knowledge 101, that's a good start. Remember, it's a journey. Today might be day one of your 365-day first round journey. So just know that it does get easier. Don't be afraid of it, and it's worth doing the hard work.